Hello, I'm David Allen. Welcome to the Not Bad series. Today we're looking at my top 8 tips on how to prepare your four-wheel drive for a wilderness adventure. Outback travel can be very hazardous and should not be attempted with an ill-prepared vehicle. So here's my top 8 tips. Number 1, the essential aftermarket accessories you'll need to have fitted. Firstly, a snorkel, essential if you're driving through water deeper than the wading depth of your vehicle. It's also highly recommended for dusty outback roads to minimise the amount of dust getting down to your air cleaner. Diff and transfer case breathers, that's extensions to the breather pipes on your diff and transfer case. This is essential if you're driving through water deeper than the vehicle's wading depth. Auxiliary battery, essential if you've got a winch or fridge. Heavy duty wiring, if you have a fridge, and you're likely to have a fridge, you'll need heavy duty wiring back to your auxiliary battery. Secondary fuel filter, that's essential to protect your motor from damage from dodgy fuel that might have water or other contaminants in it. Rated recovery points, that's essential. You can't be pulled out or recovered from a situation if you don't have recovery points front and rear. UHF radio, essential for convoy communication and also some emergency communication. An air compressor, you'll be deflating and reinflating your tyres regularly on unsealed roads and even sand driving, so you'll need an air compressor to manage that. A tow bar is helpful to fit a rear recovery point, such as this one, which can go into your tow bar, which is a very convenient way to deal with your rear recovery point. Cargo barrier, this is relevant in wagons and really essential to protect the occupants of the vehicle from getting hit by all the gear in the back in the event of an incident. It also allows you to stack your gear right up to the ceiling, which makes best use of your space. Second spare wheel will be essential and should be the same diameter as your other wheels. Roof rack, you'll need that to put your second spare wheel up there, and possible if you're carrying extra fuel in jerry cans, you'll need to stow that up there as well. Now, aftermarket gear that's not essential but recommended is aftermarket suspension with a 50mm lift, which will improve your off-road performance significantly. Other aftermarket equipment, which is optional and only recommended if you've got enough spare payload, because for every kilo of aftermarket gear you put on, you've got 1 less kilo of payload. So if you do have the payload, some optional equipment includes bull bar, winch, side steps, storage system, drawer storage system in the back, driving lights, etc., etc. Number 2, calculate your payload. There is a separate Not Bad episode on how to calculate your payload and not overload your vehicle. When you do a remote trip, you'll carry about 100 kilos of extra gear that you wouldn't be carrying on just a regular non-remote camping trip. And those who might just run the gauntlet on it and overload their vehicles run the risk of not getting paid out in an insurance claim if the insurance company can prove your vehicle was overloaded. You can also do serious structural damage to your vehicle if it's overloaded. This issue is really relevant to wagons, which have a much less of a payload than utes. some options to solve the problem if you're struggling to meet your specs on payload. You can carry less gear, which can be difficult. You can minimise the aftermarket gear, particularly heavy items like bull bars and winches. You can get a GVM upgrade. You could add, say, 300 kilos onto your payload, but that's got to be done when your vehicle is new and before its first registration. You could remove the third or even second row of seats, or you could tow an off-road trailer. Some destinations, however, you can't take a trailer. Simpson Desert, for example, you can't take a trailer. And if you do take a trailer, you need to include the tow ball download weight onto your vehicle's payload. And you've also got to make sure that you don't exceed the ATM of your trailer, don't exceed the trailer's payload. Number 3, service. So your mission is to get to your destination and get home again without spending $4,000 on recovery by a flat top. So breaking down in a remote location is very expensive, it's dangerous, and certainly justifies putting a lot of effort into preparing your vehicle to avoid that. You should get a major service. You should tell your mechanic where you're going and ask him to look at your vehicle specifically because you're going into a remote location, and he will check things that he wouldn't otherwise check even on a major service. The top 5 things you should ask your mechanic to check are wheel bearings, brakes, ensure there's plenty of pad remaining, boots around the CV, ensure there's no damage to the boots that might allow debris to get in. Leaks, any sort of leak whatsoever, get it fixed. Check all the suspension components. So they're the top 5. I'd also suggest getting your mechanic to check the engine and transfer case mounts, those rubber mounts, because they do wear out, and check for any chassis or housing cracks. You should get the service done about 2 weeks before you go, in case there's problems on the service that you need to get repaired. And if you're towing a trailer, you need to service that as well. They should be serviced every 10,000 kilometres, which would include replacing the wheel bearings with new bearings. The trailer should have light truck tyres, and you should check the drawbar for any cracks, particularly where it joins onto the body of the trailer. Number 4, battery. If your battery is not showing 12 volts on a voltmeter, you should get that checked by an auto electrician. It might be near the end of its life. Batteries are also, if they've done a lot of work on unsealed rough roads, they're vulnerable to collapse internally. And if you're going to be stopped in the one place for some time, a day or more, without using your vehicle, you will need to carry a sidle panel, particularly if you're using your fridge as a freezer. Number 5, tyres. Your tyres should be all-terrain, light truck, and have at least 50% tread. Tyres with less tread than that are very vulnerable to puncture. Number 6, vibration. Vibration will be your worst enemy, and the most likely place to have vibration problems is on aftermarket gear. So you should take all the gear off, put Loctite on the bolts. That's the sort that will come undone when you use a tool on it. Number 7, internal storage. Providing you've got the payload, an internal storage system, drawer system and the like makes life considerably more pleasant, much more comfortable when things are organised, and it also helps a lot in managing rubbing and bouncing around of all your gear. Number 8, cleaning. Cleaning before you go. It's a good idea to give your car a wax or a polish. You'd be surprised how that can minimise scratches and make it much easier to remove grime afterwards. During the trip, avoid the temptation to wash your vehicle with bore water, as it's very difficult to get the calcium off. If you do get bore water and calcium on the glass, you'll need a product like this one, which is Auto Glim, which is like a glass polish. You need to use a product like that on the glass to polish that calcium off. It's a good idea to use this product here, Inox MX3, under the vehicle before you go and after you get back after a clean. Spray that into all the nooks and crannies, folds in metal, very good for protection and corrosion protection. When you get back, the best thing to get the red dirt off your tyres is this Superwash CT18. Very hard to get off otherwise. And when you're doing your clean after you get back, avoid using high pressure water sprays around CV boots or in the engine bay. And when you get underneath the vehicle, get into those chassis rails, get into all those holes in the chassis rails and give them a really good clean out. So there you have it. There's my top 8 tips on preparing your four-wheel drive for a wilderness adventure. And remember, your adventure begins the moment you decide to go. Not bad.